It is an exciting time in poker. The World Series of Poker main event just concluded with $12.1 million, the largest ever prize in main event history, being awarded to the winner, Mr. Weinman.
Daniel Weinman.
Mr. Weinman.
Did you know his first name?
I was like, it's Michael or Daniel or something like that. But you know what? Mr. Weinman now, because he's a wealthy man.
Fair enough.
And now it's Mr. Weinman. Speaking of wealth, though, let's bring it all down to less exciting time, less exciting level.
Sure.
There's other news in poker as well. And it feels like this is the type of news that comes out pretty frequently. And what I'm talking about here is what's going on with popular vlogger Ethan Rampage Yao. He came out on Twitter, said that he is out $450K from a personal loan he gave to an Instagram influencer.
Yeah.
And it kind of sparked in us this desire to talk about scamming in general, but more importantly, scamming in poker, how it affects poker players, how it affects high-stakes communities, and how it affects you in your local card room, because it's kind of a big deal all around the industry, right?
Absolutely. This is something... Like, if you play poker with any frequency at all, people have asked you to borrow money. Like, that's just part of the deal, right? Like, at some point, someone said, hey, do you have, fill in the appropriate amount of dollars for the stakes and the room you're in. Can I borrow that, right?
Yes, indeed. And if you're a known person who has money in that community, the number goes up.
Of course it does.
As we have personally seen among our friends.
Right.
So, certainly there's scammers everywhere. Just look at your phone at all of the random number texts you have that are like, your NETFLX password is resetting. Use this link to give us your money. Yeah, there's scammers everywhere, but in poker, it's worse than other places because it's a place that attracts scammers. There's a lot of money to be had. Money flows freely through the community.
Yeah, and people are not known for making great decisions with their money in a poker room anyway, right? So going after those people often is profitable. But it isn't just the people who, quote, make bad decisions in poker or in life or anything like that, seemingly. Lots of very famous people have been down a lot of money and are out a lot of money in terms of unpaid debts. So some examples would be Daniel Negreanu, who said in 2019 he was owed almost 8 figures, that's like almost $10 million in unpaid debts from people.
That is an absurd number.
Yes.
He didn't name names at that time, but
No.
Names have been named, among the high stakes community. Of course, Rampage is naming this guy who's an influencer. He lost $450K to this guy. That's a big deal. Patrick Antonius claimed to be down a ton on these types of loans.
It was unclear if he was saying he was down 8 million or 8 figures, but either way, that's a ton.
Chino Reem, a really good poker player, is known to owe around the community despite his skill and results at poker due to other poor financial decisions, but also just taking money from people and not paying it back. Eli Elezra, beloved in the poker community, Abe Masseri claims that he's owed $850K by Eli Elezra. Now, this was as of 2019. Maybe that debt has been paid. Still, that was a 9-year debt at that time.
The fact that you would have to call out anyone anyway is absurd, right? Like, you shouldn't have to tell the world that someone owes you this money to try and get paid back. But that's the only reason why anyone ever goes public, right? It's their last desperate attempt to get paid because nothing else is working.
So these are the high rollers. These are interesting stories. It's like, how could you loan somebody so much money and then never be able to get it back because you didn't sign any contract and you didn't get into any sort of details. You just kind of were part of the community and trusted this person for whatever reason. Maybe they're charming. Maybe you just didn't want to look like a nit. I don't exactly know what it is. But here's the thing. This applies to you too.
Big time.
At your local card room. As Jonathan said at the beginning, of course, if you've been playing live poker with any frequency throughout your life, you've been asked for money, right? So what do you do in these cases? How can you get out of these spots where it's even somebody who you like, somebody charming,
right? Somebody
that you're like, this is a good person in this community. Maybe they have more clout in this community than I do.
Often they do.
Right? So how do you say no without, kind of feeling ostracized, without feeling like I'm not part of this community anymore?
Yeah. So what I do, because I've been asked many, many times for money, both by people I know well and people I don't barely know at all, but have played with some. I always just say I have a policy against lending people money, and I just say it with a finality in my voice. And that works almost always. That just like shuts it down.
It does. The thing is, we see this happen over and over again in our very own local community, Jonathan and my local community.
Yes.
We see it happen over and over again to people who are smart people because they simply don't abide by the principle of just don't give out money to pretty much anybody.
Well, it can be uncomfortable to say no to someone. It also sometimes feels like a litmus test for like, are we friends or not? All that kind of stuff. But the truth is, and I would say this to anyone, there's only like 3 people in the world I would lend money to. You're one of them, Grant. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You got and there's like 2 other people who I trust enough to actually lend money to. Everyone else, I just won't do it, period. That's fucking that.
Yep, that is the way it should be, and that's the way that you should operate in your local card room or your casino or wherever you play, because you don't want to be where Rampage is right now, having to go to the last-ditch effort of calling somebody out on social media to just try to get any sort of reaction because you loaned a person money to not feel awkward is ultimately what you did.
There used to be a thing at the World Series of Poker where it was sort of a known thing where TJ Cloutier would go around and ask people for $300 to buy into a tournament. And he owed everybody basically at the World Series of Poker $300 over the course of several years. And I luckily was told about this, and so never was in the situation where I had to say no to him either. But like, can you imagine like a luminary like TJ Cloutier coming up asking for just $300? How could he not be good for it, right? But guess what? All he wanted to do was go play, I think it was craps.
Yeah.
He 100% wasn't good for it and essentially never paid those back, to my understanding.
So ultimately, you have to think about this when somebody asks you for money. Like, why are they asking you for money?
Right.
Why don't they have the money in their bank account in the ATM? If they need it to play poker and they don't have it on them, maybe they can just play poker another day instead of putting you out of, at the very least, you'd have to feel uneasy for a while you waited for the loan to be repaid. And even if it does get repaid, that's your liquidity at that moment, right? They're robbing you of your liquidity in that moment.
Also, there's very few things that feel worse for me anyway than someone owing me money and not paying me back.
And then you have to be the jerk who's asking for it back, right?
They somehow make you feel like the bad guy for trying to get repaid, and often it's a huge waste of time and effort. It really sucks. But I think what you said, Grant, is really important. Why are they asking me for money? Especially someone who you're not really close with. It's like, why can't you ask any of the million people who you know better than me? Like, what's that about?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be? Not that you have to ask them this. You don't have to be confrontational. You should be asking yourself that question, though. Like, why does TJ Cloutier need to ask me for $300? Why can't he ask Phil fucking Hellmuth for $300 or somebody else, right?
And why doesn't he have $300?
Right, that too. But if somehow he forgot it, there's a million people who he knows really well in the Amazon room he could ask for. Why is he asking someone he's never met? There's a reason, right? It's because everyone who he knows not to give it to him.
So do everything you can to not loan any money in a poker scenario. And beyond that, just as a little aside, don't make any investments with anybody in a poker room either who's just like, you know what, I got a great investment. Just give me $500 and I'll give you $600 later. Like, this is my investment. Trust me, it's good. Don't do that either. Just don't do it. It's your money. Use it to play poker. Don't use it to give other people money.